Hey, all right. I want to say thank y'all for tapping in with the ambassador on Live and Unscript. Today, I have a good friend of mine. Man, we go way, way, way back before even basketball, to be
Yeah,
honest. So, for those
yeah.
who follow me or know me, I've been on the basketball journey for well, as an owner, 13 years. But me and my brother, we met on my other side. The folks don't know about the music, the Christian ITM. I was doing shows
Mhm.
and preaching and things like that. And I had the pleasure of meeting my good friend Stearling back then. And we just, our families and I created a bond. And here it is, over 2 decades. We're still together. And so,
That's right. Yeah.
man, I want to introduce it and let you speak, let the folks know about who you are. And then we go into a little brief part about the fact that you were a basketball owner, how I dragged you into the world, introduce.
Yeah, I remember that, man. Man, how do you have a basketball team?
And then from there, you transition to iPlan, which is something that I think we all really need, and so that's another reason why I wanted to bring you on and introduce, because it's a product or a plan that myself I'm a part of, not just as an ambassador, as a spokesman, but as they say, as a client, and just really that's how important it is. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, so I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, and then we can just go from there.
All righty. My name is Sterling Alexander, and I'm a CEO and founder of iPlan. And let me just go back a little bit because I just want to let people, like you said, when we first met, it was outside the basketball arena, and it had to do with, like I said, you were doing ITM, you were preaching, you were doing those things. And so like I said, I've been able to tell a few times is that, you're the one that introduced me to the gospel.
Wow.
And so that that's something that I will always treasure. And that our friendship alone, like I said, that was something that was just phenomenal, transition and transformation in my life too as well. So I want to let people know that, hey, yeah, that you were an essential part of of sharing the gospel with me. So I
And,
love that part. So
got it.
so
And for those who always see I'm an emoji, emoji head. I got praying hands, praising hands, and pointing up. I'm always giving God the glory because of the fact that, like I said, we both had a mutual friend who introduced myself to the gospel. He ended up going home, and so he introduced me, changed my whole world. Me and Sterling, we came together. It just changed both of our worlds, and we became, to, like I said, like we're really brothers in the faith, and that is what kept us throughout all the years of trials and tribulations of life, and even us continue to keep pushing and going for the gospel. And so, like I said, I told y'all there is a whole nother side of me that folks just be
yeah,
like, "Oh, the basketball, basketball." I was like, "No, it's really bigger than basketball." And
yeah.
so that's a here's somebody who really know where I come from and was a part of the journey, and forever grateful for him because he's also been instrumental in my life. And so I know we don't want to get y'all all teary eyed yet. So, but that's just the fact on that's
Yeah.
something that you will always see with us. Because that's what we stand on. And in that part, what happened, let y'all know, in the basketball world, because we were so close back then, when I was introduced into basketball, and shout out to Don Sims, he's the owner of the Seattle Mountaineers.
Yeah.
He contacted myself, hey, because I helped with another team. Think you'd be a great owner? I'm like, great owner, that's money and things like that I do not have, I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
hey, we'll work it out, and by the grace of God. I got into it and I started to think because we was like, oh, we got to build a whole conference. So I made a call to my good friend down at that time. He was in Salem, right? He was in
Yeah,
Salem,
yeah,
Oregon.
yeah.
Yep. And it was like, I wouldn't say it's like the best and worst. Well, I say it's the best and worst because you're the one who ended up beating me in the
Oh, I should. Oh, I can go to the closet and get my trophy there. I got
and
my
the
trophy out there. Got my
final.
trophy, man.
Right. That's the crazy bit. How we made it to the finals and I lost by one shot, you know what I mean, 1 point in the conference finals to him. And never forget it, but it was the best experience, the best game. We learned so much from each other. And Japan is one of our mutual friends. That's how, the relationships that we was able to build through basketball. And in that time we was in the ABA and the IBL. That's when the
In
IBL
IBL, yeah,
was. Yep,
IBL too
was
as well. Yeah.
the end of the IBL, and then you slowly retired and left the basketball game, and even left the state, and went to Texas. And so, like I said, we had to throw the quick basketball piece in there, and now you've transitioned to something that I know about, and I think that just the world as a whole need to hear about it. And of course, we've been talking and game planning on how to, in a sense, my nickname is the ambassador, and I'm going to be an ambassador for your iPlan. But I think people need to really hear about why and what is iPlan. And so let's get into that. What is iPlan?
Okay, iPlan, it's an online platform for people to create their estate plans online, and so that they can create their wills and trust, and then what we call ancillary documents, which is your medical power of attorney, your financial power of attorney, a HIPAA release, and directed to physicians, which is kind of a standard package if you went to a traditional attorney to get those things. So a little bit about the background of iPlan is that it's an idea that I came up in about 2020, and it was a result of one, my wife and I needing to get an estate plan as we started talking because I own another company too as well. It's a window cleaning and pressure washing company that I've had since 2008, and so from that company allowed me to self fund and create this project. And to me, it was more of a social impact. I want to impact the world. A lot of people can't afford, can't go the traditional route because of the cost. And then some people, just the understanding of an estate plan and what that means and what that, all the things that entailed with that. So, back in like 2020, it was kind of a result of, like I said, my wife and I needing, an estate plan. I went to having a friend that's an estate plan attorney, went to him, and, the structure that we wanted to set up was going to be about $6,000. And I
Oh,
was like, no, that's a lot of money.
right.
And so then I started researching on my own and started looking at different things and kind of online platforms and just wasn't satisfied. And I was like, I'd like to create something that's like simple and affordable.
Right.
And so kind of shelved the idea for a while. Then I had some family members that passed away during COVID, and then even after COVID, my cousin, my grandmother, I had a couple cousins, my aunt, things like that, and some friends and some colleagues that had passed away. Some of them didn't have wills, and I saw kind of the fallout of not having something in place. Some that dealt with family members, and just kind of seeing some of that devastation. And so I was at a meeting one time and ran into a guy that does software. He's in the software business. So that idea popped up like in 2022. And so kind of late 2022. And he said, I know a guy, a software developer I can, connect you with. So I was like, okay, cool. So I started talking with him and we sat down for about 2 or 3 months, just kind of whiteboarding ideas. And here I'm doing research, market research and things like that. And so he was like, "Hey, do you want to move forward with it?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so we kind of discussed what that what my budget was, because I was the one that's funding the whole entire project, and
Right.
um, and so we decided to move forward, and then connected with the UI UX team, the user experience and user interface, what everything would look like on the website and things like that, and then connected with a local attorney, um, and just kind of started talking with him and kind of just casted my vision of what it would look like. Because after talking to a lot of attorneys, they were like, "Man, you're trying to take my business," and I was like, "Well, not really, because a lot of people are not just busting down your doors to come in and get an estate plan and pay $3,500 for a estate plan." And
Right.
so this attorney, I liked him because he was very simple. And so prior to us building the platform, my wife and I went with him, and
Yeah.
we did a trust, and you know which has our the trust. We put our house in a trust, and then all our documents. We have our will, and then we have all the ancillary documents that I just mentioned earlier. And so that cost us $3,500 for that one. And so after talking to him and kind of casting that vision, he was like, "Yeah, I'll be a part of this." And so I got him with my software developer, the UI UX team, and they just went to work. And it was the beautiful thing is going through just having a dream, a vision of something you want to see, and then seeing it come to fruition. And so I went to an event. It was in Atlanta. It was called InvestFest. And so I went there one year just to see what it was about. And so they had a lot of speakers that talked about finances, that talked about real estate, investing, and all those different things. And when I went there, they were talking about building generational wealth and doing all these different things, but nobody was talking about how you actually do it.
Right.
And so I said, my goal was to go to create this platform and go the following year with something that was tangible that people can be like, "Oh, okay, this is what I need to do." And so we ended up going to Atlanta. Took my team to Atlanta. My daughter went with me as well. Took the software developer. Had a camera person that we kind of documented some of the things we did, and just talking to people. And I quickly learned that a lot of people just didn't have that education, just the kind of just the basic knowledge of what estate planning is. A
Yeah.
lot of people just think, hey, I don't have a lot, I don't need nothing, but that's the furthest from the truth. And so we launched last year, and we started doing some webinars and some seminars and things like that, just to start educating people and getting that understanding. So and that's how I was born. So a lot of the features that we have in iPlan as well came from just kind of family experiences. I would say like my grandmother, she was 97, and so she was living with my uncle. And I was over at the house one day, and she was not doing well, and so he called her doctor. He was like, she was like, take her to the emergency room. And so getting ready for, waiting for the ambulance and stuff. So my uncle's just looking for paperwork,
Right.
and couldn't find some paperwork and all those things. So one of the things I kept in the back of my head is, wouldn't it be nice to have all that paperwork in place right in your hand if you had to go to the hospital and show documents, um, just because you say, this is my grandmother, that doesn't mean that they can talk, they don't have to talk to you. So,
Right.
so you can have that HIPAA release and things like that. Or if you have to make decisions for, there's that medical power of attorney too as well. So some of the features that we have in the platform are from like personal experiences that I saw that I thought would go well in the platform. So
Man, I think, and this is good because, like you said, the the word says, "My people perish because of the lack of knowledge." And so, this here's an example. This is it, right? Where you're like, "Why I need a trust?" You know what I mean? Yeah, I heard of a will, but like you said, what's the process? The HIPAA, what is it? All of these things that you're talking about. I might have heard of it. I don't really understand it. It costs too much, and so you have, and the fact that you have a system is almost like a one-stop shop,
Right.
and and you get the educate. So a trust, right? Who would you recommend a trust to and for, or a will, or why? So I'm gonna throw those out
So
there.
yeah, first thing I always tell people, I'm not an attorney.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
but
Good.
I've been through this process and I've learned a lot. And from a trust is something that you want to place assets in. Like a
Okay.
house. You can put accounts into a trust and things like that to pass them down to family members. A trust is the two good things about a trust. It provides anonymity, um, and then it also kind of keep you away from probate, which is a process that most people go through. That, man, it's crazy, you know um, having to go through probate. So one short story that I have is my cousin's husband passed away not too long ago, and so his father had passed away. He had some property, and so his son was going to inherit the property. Well, he passed away. He didn't get it, and then George passed away, and then so he had property. Then George had 4 lots, and passed away, and now the family can't do anything with the property. It all has to go through probate, which is a long process. One of the stories, I met a financial planner, and so we were talking, and him and his wife, was getting things together, and she passed away. She had one teacher retirement account that she didn't have his name on it, and so he couldn't get the money, so it had to go through probate. And so the last time I talked to him, it had been 2 years, and most of that money had been dwindled down, paying attorneys, paying the court cost, and doing all those things. And so it's a process that you have to go through. That if you have things in place, you can avoid a lot of those things. So for a trust, you want to place assets in it.
Right.
Big assets. If you had Say if you had some antique cars and things like that, you want to pass down to your family members, things like that. If you have a regular, just a car, you can do a title transfer on death type of thing. And so so we put our house in the trust, and like I said, it cost us $3,500 for that. And I tell people that the same trust that's in iPlan is the same trust that we paid $3,500 for.
Oh,
That
wow.
you know that cost on the trust is $499, which is kind of the impetus of everything. Is that I wanted to create something that was simple and affordable.
Okay.
So iPlan, it's not my bread and butter. My cleaning company is. And so, like I said, that's where the social impact came in. Is I want people to know that, for one, it's important to have something in place, and then two, it is making that impact, being able to make that impact in the world. So that's with the trust there. And
And then the will.
so a
Right.
will, a will is basically, so kind of the short definition of estate plan is telling the courts, telling your family members what you want to happen when you die. So
Okay.
will, you kind of, you have your last will and testament, and then along with that comes, some of your other documents, like I said, your medical financial power of attorney, a HIPAA release, and directive to physicians. And so, like I said, within your will, it's kind of, hey, I want to dictate this and say, if I have special gifts that I want to give, to family members, I can say, hey, I want, my son to have this, I want my daughter to have this, I want my grandkids to have these things. So you can set aside, special gifts for those. And it's just how you want your funeral arrangements too, as well. So you can make your decisions and have all those things in place. Prior, if you want to donate money to a charity, that option is there too as well, with your will. And then, like I said, your medical financial power of attorney and all those documents there are very important too as well. And I say that anybody that's 18 and older should have something in place. We have Joshua, my son here that's living with us now. He's 20, No, he's 21 now. So,
Wow.
um, he has a job. He has, he has bills. He has all those things. And so, we had him set up, just the four documents. And so those four documents is, like the financial power of attorney. If something happened to him, it gives us the ability to, communicate with his bank, pay his bills, and do those things. Because when a kid turns 18, parents lose some of the statutory rights that they have. They just can't go, if your kids are in college, you just can't go and say, hey, I want my kids' records and all those things. They'd be like, yeah, your kid's 18. We ain't really got to talk to you.
Right.
So, those type of documents help, you know, um, I think it's important to have in the event that something happens. Like your director to physicians is that I always tell people is that, I don't want to put, my wife or my kids in the position to have to make a decision, on whether they're going to pull a plug or whatever medical treatment that is. I can
Right.
make that decision. So, years down the line, they're not, feeling guilty of, hey, did I do the right thing? Or did I not do the right thing? So making those decisions, whether you're 18, whether you're 80, is you can have those decisions in place. And then the medical power of attorney is that, hey, in the event that something happens that I'm incapacitated, I give my wife, can make those decisions for me if I'm unable to make those decisions. So that's kind of what the medical power of attorney does. And then your HIPAA release is just having that information, being able to ascertain that information if you went to the doctor or the hospital, and be able to obtain that information. If they say, hey, we can't talk to you. Well, you know, in our platform, you can have it on your phone, and you can just show them, hey, this is, I have it. It's right here. So those are kind of the documents that come with that. The pricing on that is like I said, I wanted to make it very affordable, and so those four documents, like for the medical power of attorney, the financial power of attorney, the HIPAA release, and directed to physicians, those documents $35.
Wow.
And my daughter had did some research when she was working with me when we was working through everything, and there was an attorney in Arizona that was charging $500 for three of those documents. So like I said, it's my goal is to make an impact. I think that anybody that's over 18 needs those documents, and so our that's that one. It's the essential document bundle, and then the will bundle comes with your last will and testament along with those four documents, and it's $149 for that one. And I would say traditionally, if you went to an attorney, it's going to be somewhere between $700 and $1,200 about um, for a last will and testament in those documents. And then the trust we have is, like I said, it's $499, and there's a wide range. I've seen, I've heard of, you know, five, 15, $20,000 to trust. Depends on the complexity of some of the things. So
And those prices, is that like a one time or monthly?
it's
How?
it's a one it's a one time cost on all the documents there. The unique thing about it is what we did with that. It comes with instructions on how to execute the documents. So once you fill out all of your documents and you're able to download them and print them out, and you want to get them executed, which means you have to take them to a notary, have a
Okay.
notary sign it for them to be valid. So,
Gotcha.
and so we have the instructions to download that. Another feature that we have is that, you can share it with a loved one. So if you want, like for us, my brother's a trustee in our trust. And so, after my wife, it's my brother. So we're able to, give him permission to be able to view all of the documents that we have in the event that he ever needs to use them or need them. So,
No, this is good, man. Because like I said, um, we all this is all of us at some point have to go. That's a
right.
given. I mean, that's one of the things that I haven't seen. There's only one. And you're gonna have me preaching. There's only one that has defeated death. You know what I mean? And that's Christ, Christ alone, right? So,
Yes, yes.
and so, like you said, the biggest thing is really how I feel like the word says, get your house in order because and be
Mhm.
prepared. And that's what I get in our conversation, just talking about it when you told me about it. And I'm like, hey, you got to be on the platform because people need to be educated. When I start to uh, promote and say, yeah, the ambassador is iPlan and here's the code Street Ball to Pro, get your discount and all this and that. They're like, what is this? Why I need iPlan? And it's a thing where it's saying that, hey, no, I have this. This is something where I'm looking at God has allowed me to create a business and, do these things. And I have a family, right? I have a wife and I have kids. And so I need to leave these things to them in some kind of form or fashion. And what does that look like? And that's where as we begin to talk and you begin to educate me, I'm like, oh, this is good. You know what I mean? And I need to be able to bring this honestly sort of to the world because I travel everywhere and I have a bunch of players. That can use this, especially
Yeah,
when you start
yeah,
talking about when we start going on international, you
right,
know,
yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
and you had mentioned about that. So for the, like for those who's listening or who's going to see this, so for like the players, because I shared this link and I always send the video to all the different basketball groups, and you're sure like, okay, why do I want to, in a sense, watch this one compared to somebody who's a coach or somebody who's a GM, you know what I mean, where I can get a job? Well, we're
Yeah,
looking at it's outside because we talk about on the court and off the court. Because if something happened to you on that court,
yeah,
this is what it is that you need to have in place to help
yeah,
you, from
yeah.
injury to, you know, death or whatever it may be, and just protecting you. And so that's one of the reasons. So le- in a sense, so we were talking about I think it was the medical piece, just one example, like for players that you would recommend. We were talking about doing webinars. Let's talk about that. You have webinars, right? What webinars do you have to educate people or to help them to
Yeah,
know?
there's a couple things we put in place. We've done webinars, and so in event if we want to set up something, with your GMs, the coaches, the players, and all those things, we can set up webinars, to kind of talk through those things, and I can make myself available. My schedule's pretty flexible, so I mean, if anybody ever called and had questions, I can help them, through the platform and things like that. It's pretty simple to go through. Once you get on, it just walks you down, question, it's a question and answer thing, and then you're able to it'll print out the full executed document. So that's good. And I think as you talk about players, and especially players going overseas and things like that, kind of at that stage where guys go overseas, some guys have families,
Right.
and so it would be I would say, man, you really want to think about those things if you're going to be leaving your family there, and if something happens, you just want to make sure that they're taken care of, and things are in order, because if you don't have things in order, it's just going to make it a lot difficult to navigate through whatever you have to go through, and whatever situation may arise.
And
So
that's another reason why I'm a big advocate, of iPlan and want to be, help get the education and get as many people signed up on it because of the fact that it really do have give a peace of mind, right? For those who don't know, uh, sort of like how the process is, and this we're not talking about the I plan. It's talking about going overseas to play, right? So when you go overseas, you're your situations, you don't know what's honestly what's going to happen, to be honest.
yeah,
I've been blessed to go to a bunch of different countries with a bunch of different players, and there's some kind of emergency. You're not just able to get on the flight and it's across the street.
right,
It's
yeah,
hours and hours, and if you have a job, you got language barriers, you have time differences, you got so many
yeah,
things that is in place
yeah,
that you want to be able to focus and do your job while you
hmm,
there because it's a job, right? And this is how
yeah,
you providing to take care of your home and your family needs to be in a safe place. And so it's one of those things where if something even happened to you while you're there, they can
yeah,
have
Yeah.
control, and vice versa. And so that's another reason why we're having this podcast, because it's one of those. It's just like, in talking to you, you really helped me to understand and see the value as I begin to talk to you, because this is not like the first time. We've been talking like for like more than a year, just sort of just
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about what's going on and planning. Let's
Yeah.
make this happen, and let's set it all up. And now, like, even I say, definitely myself, I'm up and going. I have my family here, my wife. Been our anniversary was yesterday, so of a year that I was like, I know, right?
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's one of those situations where she knows I'm always I'm somewhere.
Yeah.
And I want to have a peace of mind and give her a peace of mind that, if something happens, there's the paperwork and we have things in place to for some kind of emergency. And even for myself, with players that I tend to work with, help them go
Mhm.
overseas, or I take them overseas, it gives me a peace of mind to know that they their families are, in a sense, they're taken care of. They have things in place, because one thing we all, like I said, we know at some point we're all going to go before God, and it's either you're going home or you're getting judged. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
just really how it is, right? And so, um, I plan is gonna be, like, now I'm trying to think of how my poster's gonna be, how to promote this thing, or like, hey,
Yeah.
uh, as like the road game, I'm not only, what to say, I'm a client, I just
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not only a coach, I'm a client.
yeah, right, yeah, I
Yeah.
like that, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So,
Yeah, and I think yeah, like I said, I think it's good. Like I said, it gives as a coach, it gives you the peace of mind that hey, guys are taking care of their family. I always tell people, a will is not for you; it's for your loved ones, and
right,
it's making sure that they're taken care of. And I can just kind of think of an example. Say if you went over have you went overseas and you happen to have a bank account that maybe your spouse or somebody's not on, that hey that if something happens to you and you pass away overseas, then you know if something's in place, then they can go on taking care of bills and pay bills and things like that, and get things taken care of, and not have to figure out this probate process, which is like I said, like it's a rough process to go through. And so I think it's good, whether it's coaches and players, I think just to kind of look at it and evaluate, say, hey, this is, I have a family, and I just want to make sure, hey, I'm going overseas, just make sure that I can take care of as best as possible in the event that something happens. Like you said, we never know. And and one thing is, I wanted to make this dialogue very, that people, some people just dread talking about, hey, death and
right,
dying and things like that.
right,
But I just my goal is to kind of normalize this conversation, because it doesn't have to be a long, hard, drawn out conversation. It's just like, hey, these things are in place, these are taken care of. It doesn't have to be a hard conversation that most people think about. It's hard to think about, hey, my wife passing away, but
yeah,
it's hard to think about, if my wife passed away, I don't have anything in place. Now I got to deal with the death of my wife, and now I got to deal with all this other stuff,
right,
from bank accounts into, all, real estate or whatever the case may be. Now I got to think about all this stuff, why, you know, I'm grieving, the
yeah.
loss of my wife. So I think, having something in place makes it a little, it doesn't take away the grieving, but it takes away a lot of the stress that's put on you during that time in your life. So
No, that is true, and I think that's the one of the things as well, is all we're doing is preparing, right? For
yeah,
That's just what it is. Yes, it's a hard topic. It's a thing that we all go through, and there's periods, especially when you are in that period of grieving, you don't want to even deal with, let alone can deal with, right?
Yeah.
And so, but the world life, as they say, still keep going. People gonna still be looking for their bill, their money. They gonna, it's not
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, all right, this is what it is. No, and so
Yeah.
that's once again why I love the I plan, and why um I have become a spokesperson, because it's just so important for
Hmm.
my life. So I'm not trying to. It's not one of those things where, like, selling a vacuum cleaner, where it's like, hey, I don't really want it. I'm just trying to get a commission. It's one of those,
Yeah.
like, no, this is
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that find a lot of value in, and that I'm using, and I want to, at least share and give people the opportunity to say, yes or no, which with the pricing to it. $35, at the basic type. You're like, okay, and this is for team owners, and that's one of the things, for all my league commissioners and team owners who know me and who will watch this. Uh, I definitely want to be able to, if it's not say just with me in the sense that but get y'all connected with Mr. Stearling, but so he can speak or do a webinar, because I think this is another piece. So now, like I said, going back to your background, you was a team owner as well. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you have experience having a bunch of players traveling, all of these things that we're talking about that is important to a team. And that's one of the things that I look at, especially at the minor league, right? The minor league is nothing like the majors. The majors, they get everything in a sense, right? But that's a whole different level ball game too. So at the
Yeah.
minor league, which, that's one of the things that I really push after, because it's hundreds of minor league teams that are hoping to go and make it overseas to pro,
Mhm.
and maybe play in the, say, TBL in the bigger leagues. But it's
Yeah.
still a situation that no matter what league you're in, it's not like they're giving you, here's a will, here's this, here's that. It's still something that you have to do. It's just you may have more money
Yeah.
to do these things. So with what you created, I think for team owners, I think this is, yeah, my opinion, based off of the fact that I've been in the business for over 13 years, and God has blessed me with a pretty creditable organization from a minor league, not just off the court, but
Mhm.
on the court, as far as my records and winning and things like that, and getting guys plays. But one of the things that I always wanted to do, I wanted to create as a professional environment, give them as many resources that I can give them. And so this was one, if you would have had iPlan way back then, I would have definitely been like, yep, here's something that I need all my players to get on, because it's going to protect you no matter what. Even as we say, once you stop dribbling the basketball, you start playing the game, it's still in place. So it's something that is bigger than the game. It's just life, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, there's that life outside of the court too as well. And it is. I hope that your players, the players and things like that. Just stop and think. Just stop and think for a minute. And
Yeah,
hey, this is hey, if this happened, it's just you know, we never know when something's going to happen. So you can just stop and think, hey, if something happened to me today, what's going to happen to my family? You know,
right.
things like just stop and just think about that just for a moment. Will help you kind of put things in perspective. Yeah, I need to take care of of my family. Whether it's your wife, kids, or mother, father, whoever will be taking care of things if in the event that something happens. So it's
And,
always
and
good. So, one of the greatest stories of that I have. I have a lot of success stories through iPlan, but one that I'm truly proud of is my brother Eric. That we were friends for we've been friends for a long time. Was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer um, this last year, and so he had called me, and I went into Atlanta. I was going there for a conference, but we were going to go out and play golf and do some things. And and so I asked him before I left. I said, "E, I said, do you have your estate plan?" He's like, "Yeah, man, I've been working on it." And so when I got there, he was in a little bit worse shape than I thought. And so I asked him. I said, "E," I said, "You got your estate plan done?" And so he pulled out this paper and he had like two paragraphs written. And I was like, "Man, that's not gonna cut it." So we
Right.
sat down with him and his wife and got everything done. And so left his house on a Sunday. He went to the doctor, and I think a couple days later he was in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And he was at a point that he was not in the right frame of mind to be able to do his estate plan. And so,
Okay.
I thank God that you know that I went there. The trip was planned to go there, and we sat down. We got it taken care of. And so he passed away, and then some of the things with family members that I talked about, came up,
Right.
and I went to, he was in the military, so I went to the funeral, beautiful ceremony, and we were at the kind of the repast, and people were asking for death certificates and when I'm going to look at the will and I'm going to do all this stuff, and I was like, man, we just buried this guy. And so his wife, after that, people were, his relatives was asking that, hey, when are we going to go over the will? When are we going to do all this stuff? And if he didn't have anything in place, it would have been, she would have had a hard time.
Okay.
And like I said, by the grace of God, that we were able to get something for him, and then his wife didn't have to deal with all the mess and all the drama, because she said, hey, here's the will, this is what he wanted, and this is it. So she put a lot of that stuff to bed. But like I said, I've seen and heard stories of just, family money changes people sometimes. And
Oh, yeah,
so
it does.
money changes people. So yeah. So it's, if you even suspect, that, hey, you could potentially have some problems, or your family can have some problems down the line. It's best thing is have some stuff in place. That's for sure.
And for those, although once again, y'all know this is a basketball podcast.
Yeah.
I plan is for everybody. It doesn't matter you're playing
Yeah.
basketball, you're not playing basketball. It's not, you don't, it's for your husband, your wife, your kids. It's something for all of us, right? So it's really, it's a product and a plan that is really putting our families in the best position. And once again, this is once again why I'm really an advocate of it, because it is something that it doesn't matter what country, in a sense, it's like it's just one of those what it is. We all need to have our ducks in a row, and this is something to help us with that, and just give you that, just that one of those little check the boxes, and that's how I feel in a sense of I'm constantly moving, ripping and running, and that's the last thing that I want to be able, I want to do is, Lord forbid, I go home and my wife and my kids, and I have all of this stuff that, in a sense, God allowed me to build these businesses. And now it's like, oh, they go, like I said, probate. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. But, we got all of this access, money here, and we got this and that. He didn't put anything down or leave anybody in something or whatever. And so that's, once again, like I said, it's bigger than basketball. It's for all of us. And this is why I wanted to do the podcast before really coming out being a spokesperson for iPlan. So you can actually hear it from the owner himself, which once again, yes, I do know a lot of people, but all of them are not my good friends. You know what I mean? And this is somebody who has been a friend before basketball, and y'all heard the story. Like Christ, this is my brother. Like for real, and so it's sort of like in a sense like a ministry. Like a part of the mission that God has given us to
Yeah.
really take care of His sheep, and just saying, hey, here's the situation, here's things for your family that you need, and it's what I like. It's affordable, because that's the other part too. we look at inflations, money, all this stuff that's going, all these things that's going on in the world, and then you're like, oh, okay, how can I afford, like you said, 3,500? What for a trust? I'm like,
Yeah,
whoo,
yeah.
but to sit there, I think you said about give or take 400.
It's
Oh,
four ninety nine for a trust,
so
$499 for a trust.
499 for a
Yeah,
trust, and that's 3,000, basically $3,000
yeah.
difference, that is saved. But it's just something like I said, it's important. I'm thankful for the opportunity to continue to really work with you, to be a spokesperson, and that's one of the things I'm going to be sharing. I know you sent me a link for all the viewers. I'm gonna put it out there so y'all can actually uh, read it and be able to do
Yeah.
check up on it. How can people like get in contact with you? Either they want to know about the your webinar, they want to sign up, or for the services, have
Yeah,
you kind
I
of
could say
spoke.
if we want to put together a webinar, we definitely can. And so the link that I sent you, it's kind of the basics to estate planning, which I wanted to put
Okay.
something out that kind of familiarize with kind of the definitions that surrounds, that talks about estate planning, some of the documents that, the typical within estate planning, things like that. And then it actually have a list that you can download a list, kind of a checklist of things that you want to talk about, information that you want to gather before you jump into the application. So it's like names, date of births, addresses and phone numbers, things like that, of people that you think about. So it gives you um, kind of a little checklist of things that you want to talk about with family members. You want to decide, who's going to be a trustee, who's going to be the executor, things like that. Making those decisions. So when you jump into the application, it may take you 25 minutes to go through it. Once you have all that information down and things that you know that you want to do. So, like I said, it's pretty simple to go through. And so, yeah, that link that I sent you is just kind of the basics to estate planning. So got to, because if you've never looked at anything or never, had conversations about it, so it kind of gives you, right orientation of, what you're looking at and things you want to think about and consider. So,
Okay, so that's for my viewers. That's something that I will be putting out, so you can have the basics, and of course, you and I, we're definitely going to be continue to talk. As now, I'll be releasing most likely this week my little flyer of some sort with the little code, and I plan. I'm now a brand ambassador, if you want to say. I'm an advocate of it,
yeah.
and here's how you can get the discount or a discount, if you want to say, or how you want to be able to book and set up. So that's something too. How can people contact you, but so they don't have to go to me, you know what I mean, if they want to.
Okay, so the website in itself, it's www.iplanned.io. It's iplanned.io. So that just gives us a website, gives you a bunch of information. There's actually some tutorial videos that's on there, it's frequently asked videos that we have that you can look, gain a little bit more information, insight, things like that. And then once you're ready, like I said, you can, if you know the basic of estate planning, as you go through those, you can you know you can print out that one out, and then fill out the information that you're going to be putting into your estate plan. And then once you're ready, you can start your journey and get started from the website, and it'll roll you over to the application. Like I said, it's pretty simple. It'll walk you through step by step of everything that you need from start to finish. Once you go through that part, then you pay for it. Like I said, you can download it, everything there, and then like I said, you get it executed. You have with the download, it have the execution instructions. It gives you everything that you need to execute your documents. Like I said, typically you go get it notarized. We did create a vault that you can have. You have your own vault where you can go back and you can upload those documents. It's like a 5 gig space. You can put, pictures, videos, documents, anything in that space. and you have the ability to just share it with a loved one. So if you say, hey, I want, my brother to have this or my sister to have this, or, a mom or dad, you can you can send it to them. They can have access. They would have access to it. They can't make changes to anything, but they can view it's a view only that you can view it. If you're married, you have a spouse. They have what is called a mirrored will, and you can basically send them an invitation to do it. It preloads some of the information from your estate plan. If it's your spouse, it'll preload some of that information. Just go through, make sure everything's correct, and they can do theirs too as well. And then, like you said, to make it even more affordable, with you, they go through you, you'll get 10% off of that. So 10% off 35. It makes it
Right.
a little less expensive. So like I
Right.
say, it's to me, the more important thing is to that social impact, because to me, now I think everybody needs something in place. You may
Yeah.
not need a trust.
Yeah.
Some people may not even need a will. Like I said, if you're 18 and something like that, and you don't have a lot of property or real estate or things like that, those documents may suffice for you. Um, and so, like I said, I wanted to make an impact, because it's they say close to 60-70% of people in America don't have a will. That's a
Wow.
lot of people.
That is.
Mhm. So,
That
and
is a
I
lot.
think it's a lot of people. So, then you break down, some of the, different demographics. Some of the stats are even higher. So, so I wanted to make that impact, and,
And
found a way to do it. So, yeah.
yeah, no, and I love it. That's why, once again, I'm a fan. I'm a spokesperson, and I'm honored to be able to help you push the your agenda to help the world and as a whole, just to say, hey, here's something. Because, like you said, not getting breaking it all the way down in statistics, but just to hear 60 to 70 period, percent. That is a lot that's out there that is, going through a lot of grief. And I know if you start getting into statistics and want to be our our culture or our people, black people, right? There's a lot that really we go through or that we lack or in resources and education and stuff like that. So to be able to be someone to say, okay, here is something that we all can now be able to protect our family, or at least put ourselves in a position that we can pass it on. So, try to narrow that gap, make it smaller instead of the 70 to 60,
Yeah, yeah,
just bring it down as whatever, as much as we can. And so, yes, I want to say thank you, for your time, because I know you're in Texas. So it's what? It's going on 10:30. It ain't too late
about
out
ten
there.
thirty. Yeah, about ten
Yeah.
thirty. Yeah.
It, it ain't too late out there.
Hey,
But, once again, like I said, the I plan owners, players, everybody in my community. Uh, you see my little flyer go out, but you can skip past me and just bring Stearling in and set up your webinars. So I highly recommend owners to do that for the players, because I feel like it brings more value to your team. So now I'm gonna give y'all some free consultant business, from what I do, just based off of how do you build your brand, and especially when you start talking about a team, and it's all about really giving the players, showing that you care, right? And it's something that some owners actually, hey, we can, $35. How many players? It's 10 to 12. Okay, I can at least come up and pay that, get a sponsorship and pay that for a group, and
yeah,
set that up, and boom, and offer that to the players. That right there is something that I haven't seen, a player to come in
yeah,
and say, oh wow, okay, I come play for this team, and we're gonna have a class and we're gonna sit down. We're gonna learn about trust and wills and all of these documents that I need,
Yeah.
even if I don't go out of the country, if I still stay local, whatever it may be. This is something that when I walk away, I have something that I will be able to be very instrumental in my life and for my family. So, team owners, like I said, I'm just throwing it out there. We might want to consider commissioners. Hey, let's talk and see how we can really begin to help protect the players and put them in the best position with their families where I plan.
Yeah.
Man, is there anything you'd like to say before I let you go, my brother?
That's it, man. I think you said it good. I mean, yeah, I think that was, it's good. It's, if commissioners or coaches said, hey, man, if it even is just like you said, the $35, man, that it shows a player that you're thinking more of them and their families than their basketball abilities, and so I think they most guys would definitely appreciate that. So
Yeah. I mean,
so
look,
yeah.
I'm always thinking, hey, owners, here's another way. Yeah, I know y'all be charging trial fees. Let's keep it 100. You know what I mean? You charge trial fees. You can throw that in the trial fee or pull it out. There's so many different ways that you can do it, uh,
Yeah.
in helping the players. But at the end of the day, like what you said, it's the fact that we care. You know what I mean? And I believe that there's sponsors or businesses, because we both were team owners and we know how the
Yeah.
business work. You get sponsors and you get marketing, all kind of ways that people want to give, and you just allocate a certain amount to the team just to put them in that position. And that team, and that's one thing I can speak on. And you can too, because I watch some of the players, especially from Japan and things like that, that we both know they still love us and communicate to us this day, because of
Yeah.
the things that we
Yep.
did and we cared for them, and even, local. And so over the past decade, I done worked with thousands of players from all kind of different states and countries that if I call right now because they saw and they know that I care, that's the
Hmm.
biggest thing. And this is without knowing anything about iPlan. So this is now something I'm going to be able to be pushing even in my
Yeah.
organization because I do have a youth program, young adults, male. So I have a whole pipeline of players and families. And so this is something that I'm going to be taking to my organization because that's the beauty, like you said, where for me, say even you, there's parents. You know what I mean? How many parents?
Yeah.
If there's 60 to 70, there's somebody, one of those parents in that group that ain't got their stuff in order. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So here
Yeah.
I can say,
Yeah.
hey, you know,
Yeah.
here's a webinar I want to introduce, and that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm just giving some team owners some ideas on how you can present this to your organizations and to your community and to your families without
Yeah.
being like, oh man, it's educated and giving them a resource they didn't know about, and it's affordable. So I'm giving y'all some tips. Like I said, free consultant tips. You never know. You tap in with the ambassador and live and unscripted, you get free game. So,
There you
you
go.
know,
There you go. I'm thinking, hey, that's a marketing thing for your sponsors too, as well. I mean, hey, this is how we're taking care of our players, with your sponsorship. I mean, they look at that, man. Look, you as an owner, as a coach, man, you're going over and beyond. You're
right.
asking for the sponsorship, but you're going to use some of this to take care of their families. I'm sure there's a lot of sponsors that be like, yeah, that's very admirable of you to do. So. Yeah, me. I start thinking.
That is true. That's one thing as y'all get to see. We get to on the back and forth. We get to talking, about different ideas, and we're like, ooh, what about this and what about that? And so
Yeah,
y'all got a chance to see really like our heart when it really comes down to this because we're like, what way, any kind of way that we can help this to be a part of your life. If you can't afford it, if you don't have the money, because that's a lot of things. I don't have the money. Okay, we're gonna figure out ways on how to get the money, and
yeah,
help you with it because there is money out here. And so I think that that's the thing. At the end of the day, we care, and so we're gonna figure it out, and that's why I'm a brand ambassador, and I will be talking to a lot of folks, and you will be. coming, or I'm trying to decide. We talking to my president, my board president for my U program, and saying, "Hey, I plan. We are going to put this a part of our organization. This is a resource because we're in the process of now doing
Mhm.
mental health. One of my last interviews I did was a good friend of mine as well, Coach Matt. He shared his story about how he had to take a break because of his mental health. And so,
Yeah,
one of the businesses that I work with, one of my partners, um, is a mental health specialist. And so, we're in the process of starting and providing classes for our youth and for parents to have the resource for mental health. So, that's why I said so much bigger than basketball. I'm constantly
yeah. No, I was just saying that's man, I could commend you on what you've done, because you've gone, like you said, more than just it's more than just basketball. So you don't see a lot of coaches. Well, I'm out of the coaching now, so you don't see a lot of coaches that care about their players and their families and all that. You don't see that. So I definitely have to commend you on that.
I appreciate it, it's and that's something that I'm thankful for, God just really using me to really not just speak about it, but really be an example and live bigger than just, oh, it's just basketball, and which, and that's why we go back and I had to share that story real quick. If y'all missed it, right? He said what I was doing before I entered basketball. I was actually preaching. I was on the ministry. That's my
Mhm.
heart, right? So when you hear me sing and I put out posts about the things of God and what I believe, this platform is just my ministry. A part, an extension of what God has given me, as the word says, you faith over few things, He'll make you rulers over many. Basically, He enlarges your territory, and that's what He has done. And so this is
Mhm.
my platform that God has blessed me with that is now international. And so I continue to use it as such, but do it by being an example and not just the type that, as we say, oh, just preach out Jesus and I got all the crosses and all this and that. And then you're like, okay, all right, like really what's going on? So for me, as I said, you can tell a tree by its fruit. And so that is the fruit is really caring for the people that God has allowed me to touch. You know what I mean? And so that's why I'm always constantly thinking. Now I'm like, okay, iPlan is on the list with the mental health and the finances, all the things that's going to help, prepare no matter who it is for this life as much as possible. And you gotta
Yeah.
think for those. Trust, I do have a Bible study, so y'all gonna see more of that too. So where it's not like, oh yeah, we just doing all. No, I've been doing that with a group, and so we're about to bring that back out. So it's just really just
Mhm.
tenfold, just everything that God has allowed me to start back there with ITM and G1, and it transitioned into basketball. Well, I was playing back then, but then now I'm too old. I can't move and play like I was back then. So,
I'm a professional spectator now.
right.
You can't catch me at the Spurs games.
Yes, man. I'm gonna have to bring the wife. We're gonna have to come down there, and we're gonna have to. I've been seeing y'all all at the Spurs game. I'm like, I need to come down and catch a game with y'all. So I'll be hitting you up, and me and the wife gonna have to make a trip so we can go out there to the Spurs
Come
game with
on
y'all.
out. Come
You
on out.
know.
Yeah, I had one of my players, Denzel, that played with us. He was from Mississippi that came and played, and he's not too far from me now. So we got to, he went overseas to play and had a little career there, and
Okay.
so we reconnected, and so I took him to a game, but and so he come over and spend some time. So yeah, so it's good to see some of those guys that have gone on and done well. So.
That is honestly one of the beauties of doing this whole coaching and team owner, where you go and see them go place elsewhere and they come back, and that's one of the blessings that I really have been receiving a lot recently
Yeah.
is players have come back and say, hey, I wanted to say thank you, because by you doing A, B, and C, putting me in this position, it allowed all of this to happen. I'm like, word, did really all of that
Uh-huh.
happen? I didn't even know that. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's the
yeah,
blessing. So this is gonna be the next wave where we're saying that, hey, I'm glad that you're doing well on the court, but I need to make sure that your family and yourself is doing even better off the court because
yeah,
once the game is
yeah,
over, I
yeah,
need to have you have a peace of mind. So, man, hey, I want to say thank everybody, of course, for tapping into live and unscript. I will be back tomorrow. This is like almost full-time gig for me. Y'all see my face, y'all get tired of me just always on the podcast and video, but I'll be back tomorrow on
yeah,
with the unit. So I have my brother Kendo Sauce and Killer Cross, and we'll be in our street ball world. Uh, and we have a guest that's coming tomorrow, and then Monday I got a special one that's coming out. I'm about to post that very soon. So that one that's coming on Monday, I'm back on my international uh tip. So all those who's
okay.
trying to get overseas, I got a surprise for y'all. I just partnered with somebody and we got some tours coming up and we're looking for like 26 players to go to China. Have to look at. I think they said Italy is like five different countries, right?
Oh,
And
man.
get a
Wow.
chance to be seen and get a job. And everybody who knows me and follow me, that's sort of like how I made my niche or my name was
Yeah.
going international with players. And so on Monday, I got a special edition. I just had a phone call today and we collaborated and we got some tryouts that are coming out and we're going to look for 26 players to give them that overseas opportunity. And then by the end of next weekend, I have a friend of mine from Russia, the coach. So these are all the coaches I done played against, and I done beat some and lost some. So like
That's good. That's
the
good.
it's just going. So, man, thank y'all for tapping into Live and Unscript. I am the ambassador. Be on the lookout for iPlan. I will be having my little promo flyer coming out where I will be pushing it very hard, and you'll be able to get a discount with my code on it, and so I'll be sharing that. But you don't have to wait on me. You can tap in with iPlan with my brother. I say Mr. Stearling personally. If
Yeah,
you want to bring them out,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. I was gonna say if they have questions, anybody have questions, they can email me at sterling@iplan.io. So if they have questions, we can do that. And then, like I said, if we want to set up some webinars, I mean, I have no problem doing that.
So owners, players, uh, reach out to him directly as well. Set it up, and man, y'all get to see the replay of this video or the podcast will be on all major platforms. Shout out to Blazing 420, my family. So Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all of that stuff on all the major platforms. This podcast will be played to all our viewers. And so until next time, I'll see y'all tomorrow night for my street ball family. Hey, God bless and thank you again, my brothers.
All right. God bless you too, man. And thank you.
Oh, anytime. I'll talk to you soon.
All righty.